Ladies and gentlemen, for Miss Langata 2016, contestant number 5. Oh my
Welcome to another gripping episode of Murder Chronicles. Today, we delve into a story that shocked the nation, a tale of passion, betrayal, and a deadly confrontation. This is the case of Ruth Wanjiru Kamande. Ruth Wanjiru Kamande was born in the year 1994. Her childhood life is not so public. She grew up in a quite humble background. She was brought up by a single mom and unfortunately had only one sibling, a brother who had passed recently. Ruth was an aggressive woman when it comes to life. She was obsessed with statuses and looks, and some would describe her as a woman who was quite materialistic. She could even borrow clothes from friends just to achieve some certain looks. Besides her obsession with fashion and statuses, Ruth found herself in another obsession, a young man by the name of Farid Mohammed. Her love for him was quite unrequited, and the neighbors considered the relationship between them toxic and one-sided. Ruth had been forcing issues all through. Farid and his siblings grew up in a hostile environment as children because their mother and father would fight and argue a lot. Later, Farid's mom died, and life got even tougher. But despite it all, he was a fierce and aggressive boy. He excelled well. He joined Lenana High School. Farid excelled even further and joined the University of Nairobi, where he completed his degree in computer science. Through his expertise, dedication, and commitment to his work, he had gotten a job and had managed to attain a higher rank as a supervisor. On the other hand, Ruth Wanjiru Kamande had been trying through hustles in Dandora, including working as a sales agent and hairdressing. She worked from places to places. The details on how they met still remains unclear. Farid had never officially introduced Ruth Wanjiru as his girlfriend to any of his family members. In fact, he had told one of his close uncles by the name Edward about his situationship with Ruth Kamande, and he needed advice on the same. He had requested Farid and Ruth to go see him at his house for advice, but the couple never showed up. Farid's sister by the name Sarah knew Ruth Wanjiru Kamande. However, Ruth is the one who had showed up at Sarah's workplace, where she introduced herself to Sarah as Farid's girlfriend. It was quite some news to Sarah, reason being Farid had never mentioned Ruth to her. On the other hand, Farid had even taken steps forward and relocated from where he lived, moved to a different location to disconnect from Ruth, but she followed him there. Previously, during that conversation with Sarah, Ruth had told Sarah that she was planning to move to the Middle East for a house manager position to distance herself from Farid, since she had a feeling that Farid never loved her. It would help her move on too. However, Sarah spoke her out of it and promised that she would talk to her brother about it for closure. So unfortunate. She was a narcissist, a sympathy seeker. On the previous day before the murder incident, that is September 19, 2015, Ruth came to Farid's house uninvited. Then later the same day, Uncle Edward came to see Farid because remember, they were supposed to go see him as a couple, but they never showed up. Edward had tried to call Farid countless times, but the calls never went through. Farid told his uncle that Ruth had already blocked Edward's number on his phone without him knowing. She was quite a package, right? Edward was shocked to find Ruth there. Her reaction was quite rude when he tried to speak to her about the situation between her and Farid. She was quite obstinate, rebellious, and isolated herself and went to stay in the bedroom. Later at lunch hour, she only served herself and Farid with French fries she had ordered. The incident had the uncle concluding that, indeed, she was not the right woman for Farid. Edward left later. Ruth insisted on staying with Farid against his own wish. On a seemingly ordinary morning of 20th September 2015, the quiet streets of Buruburu, Nairobi were about to witness something extraordinary. A young woman by the name Ruth Kamande and her boyfriend, Farid Mohammed, were at the center of a storm brewing behind closed doors. What started as a simple glance at a text message soon spiraled into a nightmare. Suspicion, jealousy, and fear gripped Ruth as she confronted Farid about the messages from another woman. The tension was palpable, the air thick with unspoken accusations. The two had also argued about some letters Ruth had seen in Farid's house belonging to an old girlfriend. The old girlfriend was living in the US. She had also confronted him about two other women who were his girlfriends before he met Ruth. Amid the heated argument, Farid got so angry that he told the letters to prove to her that he had nothing going on between him and the past girlfriends. Moments later, a brutal scene unfolded. In a fit of rage, Ruth Kamande stabbed Farid Mohammed, not once, not twice, but 25 times. The sheer violence of the act left everyone asking, why? What attracted the landlord and the neighbors was the commotions inside and a loud scream for help from Farid. He was calling for some saving, shouting, saying that she had stabbed him. Neighbors and the landlord tried to beg Ruth to open the door, but she had refused. After breaking a window and peeping through, the scene was horrific. Ruth stood before him, with the knife in her hands, covered in blood. Farid lay on the ground, motionless, as he whispered some short prayers, slowly succumbing to the wounds. He died. The landlord calls the police and Ruth accepts to open the door. Inspector Joseph Otieno is the one who arrived at the scene first. The scene is quite distressing. Farid lay lifeless. Bloody floor and the walls, beddings, scattered utensils and a broken phone that had been smashed on the wall. Ruth is bleeding as well. She's claiming that she too had been stabbed by Farid. She was demanding immediate medical treatment. As she was being arrested, she added claims saying that Farid had sexually assaulted her the night before. She was arrested and immediately taken to Kenyatta National Hospital, where she received post-exposure prophylaxis. Monday, 21st September 2015. Ruth Wanjiru Kamande was taken to court and charged with murder. She, however, defended herself, saying that Farid had sexually abused her the night before. She also said that she had found a hospital card under the mattress, indicating that Farid was HIV positive, and felt agitated by the fact that the person she loved and trusted that much had finally ruined her life by getting her sick with HIV. Her statement claimed that his intentions were to infect her with HIV because he insisted on having unprotected sex with her. But this morning, right before the murder, she was in the bedroom, packing her things to leave him. That is when she discovered the hospital card showing that Farid was HIV positive. An argument heated up, and Farid insisted that there was no way he could let her leave. He was not ready to have his HIV status exposed. However, medical reports and witnesses completely contradicted with her story. After medical examinations, doctors concluded that Ruth had not been raped. The landlord also stood as a witness, stating that Ruth's actions were intentional since she had closed the door from inside to prevent Farid from getting out of the house or even having neighbors getting in to rescue him. A police officer also confirmed that the wounds on Ruth's body were self-inflicted, a way to cover up her cruelty, pretending that she got the wounds from Farid. After an autopsy was carried out, Pathologists determined that the 25 stabs on Farid's body were done at intervals and not by an individual who had been pinned down. It was clear that Ruth took the pleasure stabbing Farid to instill more pain and make him suffer deeply. More medical reports proved that Farid Mohammed was not HIV positive at all. When the prosecution team broke down all the evidence, it was concluded that Ruth Wanjiru Kamande had committed premeditated murder. It was out of frustration and jealousy. After realizing that Farid was still in contact with other women through the letters she had found, she got wild and attacked him from behind as he worked on his laptop. She stabbed him at intervals and that she took pleasure in it. That is why she had ignored his plea for help by the neighbors.
The events of the day were clear. Conversely, the accused person has not alleged that she acted out of any despair or anguish or bleakness or sadness or tragedy. I find that the accused person deliberately stabbed the deceased with the clear intention to cause him pain, suffering and death, and I've taken into account that she stabbed the accused person 25 times. I must, however, mention that it has not escaped my mind that the offense in this case was a gender-based violence. It was a violence against the deceased person by virtue of being a boyfriend to the accused just because of perceived frustration the accused had in the relationship.
Ruth was at Langata Women's Prison when she was waiting for her judgment, but shortly before that, she participated in the Miss Langata Women's Prison Beauty Pageant year 2016. She emerged the winner among 19 contestants.
Ladies and gentlemen, for Miss Langata 2016, contestant number 5. Oh my!
I was so surprised and shocked. I didn't know actually that I'm going to get this, and I thank God for it because of God's favor.
I didn't expect that I was like begging for top 10, but this personality, it was so shocking. I couldn't help it. People are going to be proud of me back home.
Her beauty gave her the victory. She became the internet sensation and citizens almost forgot about her heinous crime due to her mesmerizing beauty. The event created quite a reaction over different social media platforms. But the sensation was short-lived. Justice Jessie Lesit was not among those moved by Ruth Kamande's beauty. She found her guilty of murder in the year 2017. On December 13, 2017, Justice Lesit found her guilty of murder and ruled that the prosecution had proved beyond reasonable doubt that Ruth Kamande had intentionally killed Farid Mohammed by excessively stabbing him, stating that she stabbed Farid in intervals and having all the pleasure to do it. She dismissed any claims of self-defense.
Was unable to access the information. She locked the deceased at home, preventing him from going to work for some time on that day. Now, the second disappointment was the love letters. The accused person discovered that the deceased was still keeping many years after he broke up with the former girlfriends. Now, the discovery led to a braiding of the deceased by the accused person and finally to this attack. The accused alleged that the deceased had sex with her, knowing that he was HIV positive. I rejected that explanation. Not only was it raised at the defense stage, but also for being an afterthought. If we are to ask why the deceased in this case died, was it over frustration to access his phone? Was it for keeping old love letters of persons who had long moved on? Or because the deceased walked away from the accused to go to work without her? Now, the reasons for taking the action that led to the deceased death cannot be justified by any standards or instruments of measure. The court also considered how the murder was executed. The accused did not stab the deceased in quick succession. She stabbed the deceased one at a time. It was as if she was sampling with pleasure each and every stab she inflicted on him.
In July 19, 2018, the verdict was delivered. Ruth Kamande was found guilty and sentenced to death. The decision sparked outrage and sympathy in equal measure, raising questions about justice, punishment, and redemption. Her advocates had tried to request for leniency, arguing that Ruth had now established a close relationship with God. She was praying 5 times a day. She also had studied theology for a whole year, bettered her life by engaging in activities such as modeling, poetry, script writing, as well as dancing. The advocate also mentioned about her victory as Miss Langata Women's Prison for 2016. None of these achievements could have been attained without discipline and commitment towards change. Additionally, she had been brought up by a single mom who had invested everything in her before her life was interrupted by the circumstances that led to her arrest. She was about to join Kenyatta University to pursue business management before the incident. The advocate argued that such a harsh sentence would hinder her from accomplishing any of these dreams as well as supporting her family. But the plaintiff's side also argued that Farid Mohammed was a young man whose life was cut short only at 24 years. He was an orphan who had the responsibility to take care of his family members, so the defendant's argument was squabbled by the court. Ruth was sentenced. Death sentence for the murder of Farid Mohammed Harim. Through Professor Githu Muigai, Ruth appealed her conviction. He argued that the judgment was too harsh and prejudiced. Githu also added that the evidence at the murder scene had been tampered with. Additionally, he said that the judges had relied on contradictory witnesses. Her young age was also a part of Githu Muigai's argument, saying that she was too young by the time she had committed the murder and now was remorseful and reformed. But the judges stood their ground, stating that the evidence clearly indicated that Ruth Kamande had all the intentions to kill. They emphasized again that the stabs that led to the death of Farid were inflicted at intervals. The 25 stabs on Farid's body parts, including the chest and the abdomen, had been carefully inflicted, not in a frenzy, but in a calculated and intermittent manner. Her actions were determined to inflict great pain and cause a slow death, but certainly the stabs were not in quick successions, but rather she spaced them out as though she enjoyed it. She was also a manipulative person who had self-inflicted wounds to tamper with the truth by making it appear as if she acted out of self-defense. Ruth had even gone to an extent of accessing Farid's phone even after stabbing him. She was malicious and deserved no leniency. She was still to face death sentence. Fortunately, in 2018, Amref International requested that her sentence be reduced to life imprisonment. There has never been a life execution in Kenya since the year 1987, but such sentences still apply. In 2023, Ruth was given a chance to appeal her sentence at the Supreme Court. Farid's family members had attended the session. They were content. They felt that justice was served, and they credited the judicial system in Kenya. Farid Mohammed Harim had been served with honor. Though his life was at its peak when it was abruptly cut short, the good thing is that there was justice finally. They said that after waiting in anguish and restless hearts, justice had prevailed.
But we just wanted to thank the court and the justice in Kenya. Now we believe that there's justice in Kenya. That's the most important thing. That people cannot go killing others, taking other people's lives just because one is frustrated or is, has no other choice. There's a choice of walking away and thinking over what you're about to do.
As Ruth Wanjiru Kamande is serving a life sentence, her case remains a haunting reminder of how quickly love can turn deadly. It's a story that continues to captivate and horrify, a dark chapter in Nairobi's history. For Murder Chronicles, I am Sarah, and thank you so much for staying tuned in. And please do not forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.